Why, hello, friends. Welcome to this journey of Lent. Lent is not always a preferred or chosen experience for people because it's more difficult. It is an acknowledgement, even spiritually speaking, of these barren wastelands that we sometimes go through in our faith. Sometimes our faith gets dry, gets brittle, feels like it's being tested, feels like it's being under attack. My opinion, my interpretation is that the church, in its wisdom through the years, has seen a benefit to adding a formational quality to the rhythm of the Christian year. Where there is this time of wilderness where we focus on Jesus's journey towards the cross. And most of us don't prefer that period. We don't like to be uncomfortable. We don't like to be tested. In the same way, we don't like fasting. We don't like to go without something. We don't like to feel uncomfortable. And yet so many aspects of life are uncomfortable, and we have no choice in the matter. We really have no control over the matter. I have spent a lot of times in recent months and even years talking to people about some of these just barren places in life, these trials and tribulations that people go through, whether it is financial insecurity or instability, whether it is failing health, whether it is loved ones going through terminal illnesses and maybe even questioning why, whether it's people getting disillusioned by the institution of the church or by the silence of God when they're praying, or even by government, by society, by whatever it is. I think all of these are just little microcosms, little symptoms of these broader issues of what does it mean to have a suffering faith? And maybe even more, how do we enter into that faith well? How do we journey? How do we go through this rhythm of Lent in such a way that it strengthens our faith instead of feels like it's taking away or weakening our faith. So it's something that can be embraced and not just something that has to be endured. And one of the thoughts that I have had recently is just in the mystery of these bigger concepts, things that we take for granted. So for example, you are probably watching this video on some sort of electronic device. And we don't think too much about it. We think that this is just a recording, and whether or not we know the mechanics of it, we all understand how to use it, how to benefit from it. Even we have expectations for how it's going to work and the technical quality. But it's strange when you take a step back and think of all of the things that we take for granted. That this is recorded in a particular place and time, which is different than the place and time in which you're watching it. That somehow the recording has to go through a computer that then edits and adds and takes away things. That then gets uploaded to the cloud, whatever that means, and somewhere out in the ethosphere, it gets put on this platform called YouTube, and somehow you can access YouTube anywhere in the world, anywhere there are these invisible Wi-Fi signals, and you can connect to an internet on the World Wide Web, again, whatever that means. And then you can watch and absorb the content as if it is specific to you. How does that happen? How does that speak to you in just a right moment sometimes? How is it preserved? How does it work? There are forces at work that are much greater than ourselves, and we don't see them. We don't do anything to sustain them. We just accept them and sometimes benefit from them. Likewise, there is this interesting passage in the letter to the Colossians, speaking of Jesus, where it says, "He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created by him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together." Now, how in the world, if we can't see God, if we can't have a reciprocal conversation with God, if we go through all sorts of suffering and distress, if we don't trust the systems of this world that constantly fail us, how in the world can we ever possibly hope to get something beneficial out of this suffering, dry, barren season of Lent? And the answer is found only in Jesus. Jesus, who somehow shares with us the very image and radiance of God himself. Jesus, who, although he existed before all things, walked around in historical time. Jesus, who holds all things together. And that includes the things that we see and the things that we don't see. And while there are so many factors that we can't control, we don't support, we're not the ones holding them together. Sometimes we can benefit from them, and other times we suffer. But our suffering, I think, can be filtered through the grid of perspective. What is your perspective? Because Jesus willingly going to the cross, suffering and dying on behalf of the sins of the world, and rising again as the vindication of God and giving us the way. I think that changes things. I think that changes the way we experience our own discomforts, our own distrusts, our own periods of darkness. It's different if you see darkness as an overwhelming force that's trying to destroy you, or if you see darkness as that hidden place in the soil where your seed is beginning to grow. The difference in the perspective is God, and although we don't physically see God, we can still look to Jesus and walk in the way of Jesus. And if Jesus is led by the Father's Spirit into the wilderness, then we too can follow him and just trust that something good might come out of it. So wherever you are at, whatever you are going through, whatever the time period or season of your life is when you're watching this video, I pray that by the providence and sovereignty of God, it might be used for the purpose of a holy Lent, a blessed formation, and a furtherance in faith. And may the peace of God be with you. Amen.